All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the work of Friedrich Nietzsche,
Sounds good.
specifically his book, Human, All Too Human.
Ah!
And we're going to be trying to tease out some of the core ideas and concepts that Nietzsche is playing with in this book.
All right.
And for full transparency for our listeners, we are drawing all of this material from a free ebook that we downloaded from holybooks.com.
Yep, that's right.
So, if anything really catches your ear and you're like, oh man, I got to read this for myself, you can go and download it.
For free.
For free.
From holybooks.com.
Exactly. You can check it out yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Human, All Too Human. What do you think about that title? What does that sort of like right away tell you about the book?
Well, right away, I mean, it makes me think that Nietzsche is really going to be talking about like the core of what makes us human.
Right.
And maybe not so much the idealized version of humanity, but sort of like the everyday, the
nitty gritty.
Yeah, the nitty gritty. Yeah, the flaws,
Flaws.
our limitations.
Yeah.
Our limitations.
Really trying to get down to the essence of what it means to be human.
That's so interesting because when I read that title, I think I agree with you. Like, it is sort of this grounding of like, okay, let's not pretend that we're these perfect beings, but,
Yeah.
Really look at the flaws and the limitations that come with being human.
Right. And Nietzsche's famous for sort of like, not shying away from those uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
Yeah.
He's willing to look at the darker aspects of our nature and really explore them.
So as we start to dig into some of these excerpts from Human, All Too Human, what are some of the core ideas that start to pop out? Where do you think Nietzsche is really starting to like dig into this human, all too human aspect?
Well, I think one of the central themes that emerges right away is this idea that our morality, our religious convictions even,
Okay.
that they're not these kind of timeless, divinely inspired truths,
Right.
that we often think of them as, but that they actually have origins that are very much rooted in human history,
Right.
in social dynamics,
Okay.
and in power structures even.
Okay, so you're saying like the very foundation of like how we live our lives and how we decide what is right and wrong could actually be rooted in just sort of like happenstance human things.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a huge.
Yeah, he often argues that what we hold sacred,
Right.
what we consider to be fundamentally right or wrong, can actually be traced back to very human,
Yeah.
sometimes even kind of ordinary beginnings.
Right. So how does he go about doing that? Like, what is his method for showing us that?
Well, he advocates for what we might call a genealogical approach
Okay.
to understanding our values.
What does that mean?
So essentially, it's about tracing their historical development
Okay.
to understand the human needs and power dynamics that shaped them.
Okay.
So, rather than taking our values at face value,
Right.
he's saying, let's look back and see how they came to be.
Right.
What were the forces at play?
Yeah.
What were the human needs that were being met by these beliefs in their formative stages?
So it's almost like taking this very like historical lens to something that feels so present and so ingrained in us.
Right. And by doing that, he's suggesting that these values aren't necessarily fixed or absolute,
Right.
that they've evolved over time and they could potentially continue to evolve.
Wow.
So it's a very kind of dynamic view of morality.
Okay, so what are some other key aspects of this like human, all too human nature that he's trying to bring into focus?
Well, another really significant area he explores is the pervasive influence of vanity
Okay.
and our deep-seated need for recognition.
Oh, interesting.
So Nietzsche is a really keen observer of human behavior, and he notices how much of what we do,
Right.
from our everyday interactions
Yeah.
to our grandest achievements even,
Yeah.
are actually fueled by this desire for approval
Yeah.
and this fear of being overlooked or deemed insignificant.
I mean, that totally resonates, right? Like we all want to feel like we matter.
Absolutely.
Like we want to feel seen. But it sounds like Nietzsche kind of takes a little bit more of a critical view of this drive.
He suggests that this relentless pursuit of external validation
Yeah.
can be a significant source of both unhappiness
Oh, wow.
and self-deception.
So how so?
Well, he argues that we might adopt certain beliefs.
Okay.
We might cultivate specific skills.
Right.
We might even present a very carefully constructed version of ourselves,
Right, yeah.
all in the hope of gaining the approval of others,
Right.
rather than out of genuine personal conviction or authentic self-expression.
Right. So it's almost like we're kind of putting on a show for other people
Exactly.
rather than like living authentically for ourselves.
Right. And so he really challenges us to ask ourselves,
Right.
how much of what I do is driven by an intrinsic desire
Right.
versus this extrinsic need for praise.
It makes you think about like all the roles we play in our lives, right?
Absolutely.
Like we're different people in different situations.
Yeah.
Is he saying that we should strive to like discard these roles or these masks that we wear?
You know, I don't think Nietzsche's necessarily offering a simple prescription for
Right.
like shedding these aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
After all, he labels them human, all too human.
Right.
But I think he is advocating for a heightened awareness of these underlying motivations.
Okay.
So by understanding the powerful influence of vanity
Yeah.
and the desire for recognition,
Okay.
we can perhaps develop a more realistic and less idealized perception of both ourselves
Right.
and those around us.
Okay. So it's kind of like this, like step back, look at yourself in the mirror and be like,
Exactly.
okay, what am I doing this for?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, what's really motivating me here?
So it sounds like he's pushing for people to kind of look inward at themselves and really be brutally honest about their motivations.
Absolutely. He champions a spirit of intellectual honesty,
Cool, yeah.
a willingness to confront the less flattering aspects of our human nature. His aim isn't necessarily to condemn these traits,
Yeah.
but rather to bring them into the light of understanding
Okay.
so that we can move beyond these simplistic or overly romanticized interpretations of ourselves
Right.
and the world we inhabit.
It's kind of like he's not letting us off the hook,
Yeah.
right? Like he's really pushing us to be like, okay, no, this is the reality of being human.
He's pushing us to be more grounded, I think,
Yeah.
in our understanding of ourselves.
That can be kind of scary, right?
It can be.
Because we like to think of ourselves as these good, moral, upstanding people.
Right.
And he's kind of like, well, maybe not so much.
Yeah, he's saying, let's take a more realistic look. Let's
Yeah.
be more honest with ourselves.
And I think it's important to say, like, he's not advocating for nihilism
Right.
or like giving up on being good.
No, absolutely not.
It's more about, like you said, this grounded view of like, okay, these are our limitations.
Right.
These are our flaws, and we have to work with that.
It's about perceiving things with greater clarity.
Yeah. Without the distorting influence of wishful thinking
Okay.
or these deeply ingrained, unquestioned beliefs.
So if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm starting to get this idea of human, all too human.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the main thing they should take away from this book and from this conversation?
I think the central takeaway is this powerful call for critical self-reflection
Okay.
and a deep questioning of the origins of your own beliefs and values. Nietzsche challenges us to consider the very human, all too human factors that have shaped the moral landscape that we navigate
Yeah.
and that continue to influence our thoughts and our actions.
And not just like our own beliefs, right?
Right.
But the beliefs of everybody around us too,
Exactly.
and how those beliefs came to be.
Yeah, he really urges us to become more aware of the subtle and not so subtle role of vanity
Yeah.
and the desire for recognition in our own lives.
Right.
And to strive for a more honest and less self-deceptive understanding of ourselves
Okay.
and the motivations of others.
Well-
So that's a lot to think about.
It is.
It's very dense.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting, right? To think about like all of these grand narratives that we believe,
Right.
all of these deeply held convictions
Right.
that really they might just have roots in, like,
Yeah. In surprisingly human soil.
yeah, exactly. Just completely normal, everyday happenstance.
Exactly.
So as we kind of wrap things up here, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
How do you think this human, all too human aspect that Nietzsche's exploring,
Yeah.
how do you think that might actually change your understanding of your interactions with other people,
Yeah.
both like personally and within society as a whole?
That's a great question.
What do you think? What kind of shifts in perspective might you have if you actively considered,
Right.
like you said, the human origins of beliefs
Yeah.
and the influence of vanity?
Yeah, I think it can lead to a lot more empathy
Okay.
and understanding. For one thing, because we start to see people not just as, sort of these finished products,
Right.
but as products of their history,
Yeah.
of their upbringing,
Right.
of the forces that have shaped them.
And all of their flaws.
Exactly, and all of their flaws.
Yeah.
And so I think it can make us a lot more forgiving
Right.
and a lot more compassionate.
And maybe also just more understanding of how we got to where we are as a society.
Absolutely.
And maybe even give us a little bit of hope that we can change.
Yeah, because if these values have evolved over time,
Right.
that means they can continue to evolve.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So it's not all doom and gloom,
No.
even though sometimes Nietzsche can sound a little bit
He can be a little bit pessimistic.
Pessimistic, but I think ultimately he had hope for humanity.
I think so too.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into Nietzsche.
It has.
I feel like I've learned a lot.
Me too.
And I hope our listeners have as well.
I hope so.
And on that note, we're going to wrap things up here. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you later. Bye.